The events in this program are inspired by a true story. Names, dates, and details have been changed. Viewer discretion is advised. On this episode of Bizarre Murders,
Celeste?
when a virtuoso musician vanishes in the middle of a performance,
I'm calling the police.
investigators discover there's a killer waiting in the wings.
Just leave me alone, please.
And everyone is a suspect.
Fingerprint time.
Do you think this is a game? Do I look like a fool to you?
Will they be able to penetrate a closed world of bitter rivalry and ambition to catch a killer?
Do not let anyone in for any reason.
Or will someone get away with murder? Celeste is a young virtuoso cellist who just graduated top of her class from a music conservatory in the south of France. She's left the provinces behind and moved to the City of Lights, determined to make a name for herself as a soloist. And Celeste has come a long way in just 2 years. She's worked her way up the ranks to second cello in an illustrious orchestra. But she has her eyes on being first cello and is willing to do whatever it takes to be the best, even if it means making enemies along the way.
Like the song says, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, even if what you're playing is Mozart and Beethoven. Behind those lovely harmonies, the classical music world is cutthroat. Kind of reminds me of my time at the FBI, because to make it in an orchestra, you got to be driven, ruthless, and super talented. Celeste is all of the above, and that makes her fellow cello players nervous. Let's say they're highly strung. Yeah, she's made a few enemies, but that's the price you pay to be top of your game.
Celeste is so focused on her music that she has no time for romance. But even if Celeste isn't looking for Mr. Right, someone definitely has his eye on her.
Celeste is young, talented, and beautiful, on her way to the lofty heights of the classical music world. Of course she has fans. Now maybe this is just the cop in me, but there's always something a little creepy about secret admirers. Sure, if my poetry was that lousy, I'd probably want to remain anonymous too. But flattering as it might be, you gotta stay wise, because your secret admirer could be just a few cheap rhymes away from becoming a stalker. And no one wants that kind of fan.
It's opening night of the musical event of the season. And the Opera House is packed with the who's who of Paris society. But tonight, Celeste is feeling under the weather. She lives by the words, "The show must go on," so nothing short of a natural disaster will prevent her from picking up her bow for the final acts. When the opera resumes, Celeste is nowhere to be seen. And when the concert's over, she doesn't come back to the orchestra pit to get her instrument.
It might not seem like a big deal, but you gotta remember, with musicians, their instruments are like their babies. They don't just leave them lying around. Not to mention, a cello like Celeste is worth several $1,000s. She would never just leave it. There is definitely a bum note in this situation.
Celeste?
Celeste's friend Amelie knows that she isn't feeling well and thinks she might be resting backstage.
Have you seen Celeste?
Who?
Celeste, dimwit. Second cello.
Whatever, lady.
If Celeste found a quiet place to rest during the intermission,
Celeste?
she might have fallen asleep.
Are you back here?
But the backstage service corridors are confusing to anyone unfamiliar with them, and the musicians rarely have any reason to venture there.
Dominic? Dominic.
So, did you find my runaway cellist?
No, but I found her shoe lying in the hallway.
No. So what?
So that's weird, no? Who leaves their shoe lying in the hallway? I think there was blood. Maybe we should call the police. Something terrible might have happened.
Don't be silly. It's a good riddance as far as I'm concerned.
I'm calling the police.
Inspector Javelle has detective work in her blood. She's from a long line of police officers stretching back to the days of Eugène Vidot, the first French detective and the inspiration for Sherlock Holmes.
So, has Celeste ever done this before? Left in the middle of a concert?
No.
Romantic problems?
No?
So here we have a musician who never misses a day of practice, let alone half a concert performance, and she has up and vanished. Her friends found her shoe near a trail of blood backstage.
Show me where that shoe is.
But if anyone can figure out what's going on, it's our inspector. She's a lot like Celeste herself, determined and meticulous, and nothing escapes her attention. Like Dominic's attitude towards the situation, Javelle sees right off the bat that her missing cello player has rivals.
This is where I found the shoe.
Don't touch that. There might be evidence. You two, go back to the rehearsal room and wait for me. Do not leave the building.
It's down there.
Deep in the backstage passageways, Inspector Javelle discovers signs of a struggle. There's a streak of blood next to the abandoned shoe.
Quite the night at the opera so far, isn't it? Now, we all know that in show business, things go on behind the scenes and we all want a glimpse. The thing is, you rarely get one. But if you're in the crook-catching business, your badge is a backstage pass to the darkest corners of human nature. And our inspector is shining a light into a very dark nook indeed. Looks like our missing cello player took her final bow. And this is clearly not some random thing. I mean, it's not like she strayed into a bad neighborhood. It's an opera house full of civilized people, right? If all of this is reminding you of a certain famous story, just remember, in real life, there are no phantoms, but there are killers. And there's one on the loose right now.
Get me the medical examiner on the line and lock down the building. Do not let anyone in or out for any reason.
To Inspector Javelle, Celeste's murder has all the hallmarks of a sexually motivated crime.
After a few years of working homicide, you learn how killers think and how they do things. And in Murder 101, you learn that killers almost always try to hide the body. I mean, it seems obvious, right? Celeste has been tied up and partially undressed. To me, this looks like the killer wants to send some kind of message. Whoever murdered Celeste has something to say.
When Inspector Javelle searches Celeste's locker, she finds the anonymous love letter. It could be a key clue. If she finds who wrote it, she might find Celeste's killer. Inspector Javelle collects prints from everyone in the building as she takes their statements.
It's going to be a long haul for our inspector. From an investigative point of view, it's a logistical nightmare. Everyone in the building is a suspect.
I can't believe it. Why would someone do this to her?
She can narrow things down a bit because whoever hid Celeste in the utility closet wasn't an audience member. They don't have access to Backstage. But that still leaves over 100 people, musicians, stagehands, cleaning staff, managers, and any one of them could be the killer. But there's a technique we call containment, and just like it sounds, that means keeping all your suspects in one place like fish in a fish tank, so no one's going anywhere.
Are you sure Celeste had no romantic issues? Maybe an ex-boyfriend that wanted to do her harm?
She had a casual thing with someone here a while ago, but
Someone here.
Yeah, someone here.
Do you think this is a game? Do you think that you and I was a game?
Amelie tells Inspector Javel that Dominic and Celeste had been briefly involved a few months ago.
Do I look like a fool to you?
But the whole time they were sleeping together, Celeste had been trying to unseat Dominic as first cello.
Never again!
When Dominic found out, he was furious and broke off the affair.
So you and Celeste had an affair, and when you broke up, you got a bit passionate.
No, I'm an artist.
An artist with a motive?
How dare you suggest that I could possibly be capable of
She
committing...
wanted your job, Dominic, and she humiliated you, correct?
Yes, but I'll never be capable of committing such a...
We're done now. Don't leave the building.
Sex, ambition, jealousy. It's a classic emotional cocktail of the Molotov variety. Now, normally Dominic would go from first cello to prime suspect, but there's one problem. Everyone knows our hot-headed friend was playing when Celeste went AWOL. He might have given her the heave-ho as a lover and a rival musician, but he didn't kill her and hide her in the utility closet.
24 hours into the investigation, Inspector Javel gets a break.
Well, I was just going out back to get some fresh air, and I saw them talking.
When a violinist claims to have seen Celeste during the intermission, and Celeste wasn't alone.
I didn't really want to get into it, so I just kind of turned around and walked the other direction.
The violinist was probably the last person to see Celeste alive. But there's a problem.
I didn't really get a clear look.
She says she can't remember what the person with Celeste looked like.
Is it a man? Woman?
For cops, memory is both a blessing and a curse. People forget what they see. They second-guess themselves. Their memory fades. It's notoriously unreliable. But in any investigation, witnesses are also crucial. We need to know what they saw as accurately as possible. So sometimes, to get the old memory banks working, you need to try something a little outside the box.
Have you ever been in a hypnotic state?
You're joking, right?
Not in the least. Just keep your eyes on the pen and relax.
Oh,
It's you. Just leave me alone. I need some space here.
yeah, I can show you the way to the backstage door. Get some real air back there. How about it?
No, that's okay. Just leave me alone, please.
That was weird.
Tell me what you saw.
It was a young guy. He looked like a stagehand.
It's Inspector Javel's first solid lead. If Celeste was last seen with a stagehand, she can now focus her interviews on a specific group of people.
Okay, that's all for now, but don't leave the building.
The coroner's preliminary report is ready, and the results are not what Inspector Javel was expecting. It turns out Celeste was not sexually assaulted, as she had initially assumed. When Inspector Javel was reading the coroner's report, something clicked. When she'd first arrived at the Opera House, she'd taken a mental snapshot of her surroundings and noticed the rigging used ropes tied in a very distinctive knot, the same knot used to tie up Celeste.
this is what we call a major break. A witness thinks she saw Cellist talking to a stagehand. And those knots? You don't see any musicians tying them. It seriously narrows down the suspect pool. Everything in this investigation is now pointing backstage, but that still leaves a lot of people. And our inspector needs more than finger pointing if she's going to make an arrest. What can I do for her?
Inspector Javel interviews the backstage staff one by one, starting with Victor, the stagehand she encountered when she was retracing Celeste's movements during the intermission.
Can you explain to me why you were cleaning up a few feet away from my crime scene?
I hate you know that?
Victor tells Inspector Javel that it's normal for the backstage crew to have a few drinks during the performances.
Who cares? No one can hear us back here anyway. So full of themselves, le bourgeois, le musician. You know what? They'd be playing in a park without us. But we make more than them, so who cares, right?
The night of the concert, he was hanging out with his buddy Luke.
Oh, God.
When the police arrived looking for Celeste, Victor didn't want management to find out about their backstage activities, so he tried to clean up the mess.
So you fellows don't exactly hang out with you musicians, I take it.
Hell no. They make less than us, so they resent us. Even if we were making the same money, they'd still look down on us.
And this friend of yours, Luke, what did he get up to after your little refreshment break?
Back to work, I guess. You'd have to ask him.
Fingerprint time. Oh, and next time, you may want to spike your coffee with vodka. It has no smell. Where were you during intermission?
Next on Inspector Javel's list is Victor's friend, Luke.
I was taking a nap by the wardrobe area. Well, so what? Everyone takes a nap there sometimes. Away from the so-called music.
Did you see her?
No, I didn't see what's her name.
Her name was Celeste, and you better get used to it because we're not done talking about her. Did anyone see you napping?
How should I know? I was asleep.
We all know people who mix work with a little pleasure, and though that might be against house rules, it ain't exactly criminal. Nothing wrong with wanting to end your shift on a high note, right? But this stagehand's story is sounding a bit off-key to Inspector Javel. He's a little too, say, cocky for somebody being questioned about a murder, and that gets her attention.
Inspector Javel can't find anyone who saw Luke taking a nap during intermission. In fact, after his drink with Victor, no one can say for sure that they saw him at all during the window of time when Celeste vanished. Inspector Javel has now interviewed everyone who was there the night Celeste was murdered. And when she runs a fingerprint check on the stagehand Luke, she discovers he's been in trouble with the law before.
Assault with a deadly weapon 2 years ago. 7 months in prison. Victim, a woman. On parole. Got a backstage job through a government program.
Luke's fingerprints are on items removed from the crime scene. But far more significantly, the prints on the anonymous love letter given to Celeste are also a match for Luke's.
Miss my company, Inspector?
Inspector Javel now has evidence that connects Luke directly to Celeste.
Does any of this remind you of anything?
So the pothead stagehand with the attitude has left his prints like a trail of breadcrumbs from the love letter to the utility closet. But so what? It's not proof of murder. This is what we call the dreaded circumstantial evidence, and it's the hardest thing to bring to court.
Well, I do work there. You got any DNA proof?
So while it might not look good for Luke, that's all it is, a bad-looking situation, and you can't cuff a guy on bad looks alone. If that were the case, Luke would have been incarcerated long ago. Inspector Javel is gonna need some hard proof, or better yet, a confession. And that's when looking bad can work for an investigator. You use the circumstantial evidence to pressure a suspect by shoving that unflattering stuff in his face. And if he can't clean himself up convincingly, Inspector Javel might have a solid case.
You make me want to sing because you're my everything.
I got a kick out of messing with her. Highbrow type.
Very well. But a witness saw you and Celeste together, and no one saw you napping backstage. So where were you?
Napping, like I said. That string player, we work in the same place. Like, none of this amounts to meld.
You seem pretty confident, so I imagine you won't object to me searching your locker.
Look, you can't do that.
Yes, I can. So you like souvenirs, Luke?
Inside Luke's locker, Inspector Javel finds Celeste's hair clip.
I don't know how that got there. That was planted.
We both know how it got there, don't we? You're under arrest for murder.
With unmistakable evidence pointing to Luke as Celeste's murderer,
Celeste.
he knows there's no point denying the crime.
Okay, listen. Look, she had it coming. I just wanted to scare the people. Those people always treat us like crap.
Keep talking. If you come clean, maybe we'll be able to cut you a deal.
Oh.
Hey, golden tonsils, patois, shut it! I'm rehearsing tonight. Get out.
She was so stuck up. Too sophisticated for someone like me, right?
Luke tells Inspector Javel that Celeste stands for everything he hates in life, especially privilege and snobbery. But he just couldn't resist the way she played music. Luke couldn't bring himself to approach the beautiful and talented Celeste. And as his unrequited love grew, so did his frustration and resentment, until the day came when he decided to teach her a lesson.
Who hasn't fallen for that person who's out of your league? Yeah, it's harsh, but most of us just suck it up and carry on. But some people just can't do that. I've seen this 100 times in my line of work. That unrequited thing that goes from heartache to hatred in a most bloodthirsty way.
It's you. Just leave me alone. I need some space here.
Look, I can show you the way to the backstage door. Get some real air back there.
Yeah.
How about it, huh?
I don't think so. Just go away, please.
We're getting some air. Move. And don't bother screaming. No one can hear you here anyway.
Okay, just don't hurt me. What are you doing, you piece of trash?
Do you like my letters, huh?
That was you. You've got to be kidding me. Let me go! Ah! Let me go!
Hold your legs still. Hold them still. I tied this rope.
Luke claims he tied Celeste up to buy himself a bit of time to skip town before she could raise the alarm. It's typical thinking when you're a crook who's gone too far. He says he just wanted to forget Celeste, leave her in the opera house all behind him. But he hadn't counted on the object of his hopeless adoration fighting back.
Oh, yeah.
Shut up!
Luke tried to leave the opera house, but got cut off when Celeste's friend went backstage to look for her.
So, he said we'd cut a deal.
Just be grateful we retired Madame Guillotine a while back.
Luke is sentenced to 35 years in prison for second-degree murder.
What the hell? No deal?
Take it from me, you can't count on mercy just because you fessed up to the deed. Murder will always be murder, and giving it up is no guarantee justice will go easy on you. Luke is going to be singing to himself for the rest of his days.
Despite the tragedy, the show must go on, just as Celeste would have wanted. The orchestra plays a moving tribute concert in her memory.
They say music is the gateway to the soul, and even a punk like Luke has one of those. But he fell for the kind of gal he knew would never have anything to do with him, and instead of staying in the wings, he took on the starring role as the villain in a tragedy. Murder has to begin sometime, and those harmonious strains from Celeste's cello planted the seed of discord in our tone-deaf killer. Love can drive anyone crazy, and when you know it's hopeless, it can drive you and the object of your affection right over the edge. But thankfully for everyone, our backstage killer won't be getting an encore anytime soon.